Geshe dāgī chūshī jīvē sōnām jē rōlā vējē sāngyē rō shō sāngyē shēdā sōyē shē chāshō bādē dāni jāsā jē dāgī chūshī jīvē sō rōlā vējē sāngyē rōlā shō sāngyē shēdā sōyē shōnām lā chāshō bādē dāni jāsā jē dāgī chūshī jīvē sōnām jē rōlā vējē sāngyē rōlā shō 승제 탐지 동도 토자라는 거 양다고 저 상지 공부를 보지는 타버지 대시에 담비 쉬었으냐면 마다 샤주스 좀 맞춘 저 세다는 셈을 히우스
I would like to remind every one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it bodhicitta motivation or the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of motivation, we should participate in this teaching.
Today
we are going to talk about a mind-only school of thought, or we call Chittamatrins or Semsampa in Buddhism.
Kasa konde pige domja dangde de semna be senyi som ko ne de war sta dengi gol dia do yang je de ne singa dia so so ji yang shi su do lu su men da ro semna be she tam ji senyi som na de shi go res
different schools of tenets of thoughts of philosophy may use different classification systems to propound their thinking and thoughts. In the case of Chittamatrins, on the mind-only school of thought, they present what we call all phenomena under three categories or classifications.
that thing is some this karsa xiong yung zu gunda som si go wa xiong se de karsa na ka ni dije gang ga dije de xiong tong ji xie dije de xiong xie ben song de xie na da so de xiong xie so xiu da ji go ro wa da til ko ya de da ji ba da dong be da be cha de ji le ya in gunda se go da de ne de rang sin ji be dong se ya da xi ru tong de dong se na de ju gi rang sin ji dong se ya ka je dong ni di dong ba de la ka re yung zhu si li da xue xian ji da so de gan xiang na ni gan ga ji wa wa
So often in the Buddhist literature, we find the use of the term three characteristics or three definitions, Tsinyi in Tibetan, and I just use the word classifications. And these three are Shenwang, other dependent phenomena, and Yongdruv, thoroughly established phenomena, and Quinta, imputed phenomena. So these are the three characteristics or three definitions or three classifications under which Chittamatrins include everything that exists we call phenomena. And so if I ask for a specific example to exemplify these three characteristics or the definitions, if you will, form, for example, is an example of other dependent phenomenon, Shenwang in Tibetan, the form itself. And now the label, the term form, which is imputed onto the form itself, right? Because when we conceptually perceive form, so that perception involves seeing form through the medium of its generic image, okay, and so that is what we call imputed phenomenon, right? Form has a label, something's labeled onto something called form. Now the form is devoid of what we call characteristic existence, all form is devoid of externally existent reality, and that nature of the form is what we call thoroughly established phenomenon. So using form as a particular example, we can talk about the three characteristics that form itself is other dependent phenomenon, and a form that is labeled as form and perceived conceptually through the medium of its generic image is what we call imputed phenomenon or reality. And the form is devoid of what we call substantial entities or existing by way of its own characteristics, if you will. That is what called thoroughly established phenomenon.
That is so that. Two the key of two day any human show. This the human said the person that do the pay to Saganga to the young object or to the much of the page to Hirayamarwa. Said the human to show. That coming on the dedu country, she go in the Tabato in the Yinson do in the Kawa do in the human do. Said the human to do what is. Do tap into it and a human human thing to show.
So other dependent phenomena or Shenwang and what we call the Gyeltsen produced phenomena or products are synonyms, if you will. So everything that's called product or everything that is produced is what we call other dependent phenomenon. Now, of these three characteristics of the definitions, where the different schools of thought, they have debate and argumentation about reality, mostly it is related to other dependent phenomenon because it is based upon that other dependent phenomenon, which is the nature of products, right? Then we can talk about how you and I go through the feelings of happiness and suffering, or pain and pleasures, or how we will be able to how should I say not able to get out of samsara, or how we really got into the samsara and going round and round in samsara. And so the schools of thought can debate about it. Okay, so there are such things as other dependent phenomenon, right? Samsara, nirvana, happiness, suffering, and all these other things exist. So how do they exist? Do they exist by way of their own characteristics, or they are lacking such characteristics? Now schools have fun here, right? They can debate about that.
What did you say that that? He was a new to say to you, did that he want a so he would judge you or consider. Judge you that there was a musician, so he would judge so on the Zoom on Joris. The same the best in any soul, you would judge you are the inner, so he judge you are the talk about many of that and you mother, so on the Zoom you Maris. That's why I did the word, can't you? That so he would judge you get the so called Nizu on the multiple that tribute Thomas and tell that take shower. You don't you say shower? What do you do? What is that? Judge you what they got Timor, Julu Judan did that. Don't be the Ming part that the Koran change of Koran suit, Koran Ming to town or they are correct. What is your shower? Don't be part of him, the Koran suit cut away over. Carson, not the Chala, which you mean by get on the Chala go tongue, tell Ming by get Chala, there is Logia Marva. Or should I the Kizi Koran on the 2 years, and the Ming Mazak Chala to Carton, but Losan says you busy, could Ming Machine, Losan Tonta, Losan Leso say, what did they and Logia was what did you want to ask? We didn't Ming Tagu would ask. She has a quick chuka in Korea. Ming the Jew what is Tobeda, Ming Shabasi, or Stephen in Coton, like Google, is that the Tigil song be repassum there, because you make a love me say, but did it repassum your or the guy or two cowards.
If we take form as an example, Rup or the soup, for Southern thinkers, I might say that a form from its own side has some kind of entity or quality that deserves to be called, almost like call me form, right? That's my name, level, right? I exist and recognize me. I'm here, sort of thing, and I earned that name from my own nature point of view, right? I'm a form, and then I should be called form. Yeah. Whereas Chitta Martin say, there's nothing, from the form's side, that really it says, I deserve to be called form, nothing else, right? It's just a labels imputed by thought and concept onto something called form. Okay? So therefore, a form does not exist as an entity by way of its own characteristics. It's just simply called form by terms and concepts. So a form devoid of entityness or the characteristic existence is what we call thoroughly established phenomenon. And so Chitta Martin said that if a form were to have some kind of entityness, that backs it to be called form. I'm a form, boom, don't call me anything else. Then even if we don't know the term form, we should be able to perceive whatever the object is without understanding its name or the label. We should perceive it as such. The example Geshe has given is if a person is called Lobsang, let's change it to John, right? Because we are talking in English here. So there's nothing from the side of the person, who is called John, right? I'm John. Don't call me anything else, so it's just a label, a name given to somebody called John. Okay? And if the John were to exist as some kind of entity from his side, then even people who don't know that label, right, they should be able to perceive that person as a John and nobody else, right? Only when we learn the names, right? That's John, that's Sally, that's Mary, right? Then we know the person. But until we know the names, we see something, some kind of person. We don't know that's a Sally, Mary, John, whatever, right? So that's what the Chitta Martin is saying. The names or labels are imputed by terms and concept. Nothing from side of the object says, I'm Sally,
No, there is what the report with it. That the report somewhere because the Mengal Lodge. 미제와시 데니카사 야신의 엉고스야 건사 니유 타데 타야도 건사 니 유지가 타와서 건지 디데 다다 니카로 장애가도 그러잖아 리버스면이래. 디스고 다 건지 배는 야신세야도 하야 엉고스야도 동심세야도 건사 지랑라 야신 코나 명을 봐.
네.
레디 똑바로 는데잖아 야신시도 나나 찍시 이 동심세도 나나시 하야 엉보다 나나시니 나나디에 배 pomakawa na ki khaga nang ko da ka ji minda che ta jugi rang thing tho so na e to pe nang zi na yi tho gu ra de tho ko na en jaji khangsa che li ya ni khangsa gi tha de som tha ya nda yang chamsi ding de ni che ni ga la da ji ri da de da de ro ka sa yerbe se ya se or yerbe se khangsa yeri yerbe se ya de da 참지 예배세야 그 예배 명직 봐세 다 레카가래요 봐 그래서 그년이야 저 참지 예배라서도 예배샤 애들이 예리 예배라서도 예배 직바샤고 노게 똑바로 가가 쳐 말했어 봐 근데 딘다 거기 가자니래서 다 가자니도 찍래도 그랬어 댕기도 가자 찍도 소물에 들어라 봐
알다디 선자바기 파티아
선자단 거지 다다디 주기랑 뭐 무슨이 말았어 디지데 되다
the Chitta Martins, they use some forms of reasoning to refute, entityness, right, in objects, if you will, something existing by way of its own characteristics. And the reasons, there are three of those reasons we talk about. One is if an object exists as an entity, in and of its entity, then even before we label something as whatever it is, there's no need to label. Actually, we should be able to perceive whatever that is, right? Even before we label the object, we will have the perception of the object because there's no need to be labeled because it says, here I am, So that's a problem, right? Until we give a name or a label or something, we don't recognize whatever that thing is or whoever that person is, So we got that problem here. Another thing is, how, one person can be called by different names, right? But it's the same person. But if you give different names, at least you might have a different sort of feeling right? That goes with each name. In the Buddhist text, the king of gods is given by different names. There's Indra, and then there's other names. It refers to the same person, but when we use a different name to call the person, it comes with different conception of the feeling, right? It's not, so if something exists from the side of a person, then we can't call the person with different names, because then that one person becomes too many persons, people, right? I mean, who are you, Indra or whatever these other names you have? So, Siddhartha Maharaj says there is that problem. Then another problem there is there are different people with the same name. Yeah, so Geshe's example is maybe a person who belongs to the royal caste, Kshatriyas, called Nyerbe. And there's another person who's a Brahmin, a priest classhood, who's called Nyerbe. Now, if something exists from the side of a person as an entityness, then these two people might become just one as well, right? Now, who's a Nyerbe? This claims I'm a Nyerbe, and that one claims I'm a Nyerbe, right? So, who is what? So there's that problem. So these are the what are called reasonings or the logic Siddhartha Maharaj used to refute that there is external entityness, right, in objects and people. No.
영어는 쳐도 오면 이거 철두님이 요 말로 똑바로 쳐도 오면 있어야 되거든. 찍도 쳐야 되와. 나도 가마세도 서래. 재미셔야 되와. 어쨌든 똑바로 동시 팀이 메서 똑바로 동시 다들 자신도 숨좀 거든. 간도 다 동시 용자시나. 나와도 전문 공부하시고 그래와. 리모브진스고 그래. 어디네 가서 시시진스고 그래와. 다 되게 슬로 차오는 거 시시진스도 그 리자 세부산 다고도 와서 로스도 가가도 와. 다 나와서 그런 단다 데려와 가서 되게 명리 코미세 다이스가 요마와. 또 가서 오거진스는 그 나와 문바스가 여서 어디선도 애니 오거진스가 와. 어쨌든 그것도 이게 나와지가 그래야지 그 노산 샤들로 또바 가가셔도 어디 가가셔고 제가 또바 가가셔 나히 지금 주고는 나와지 시시제 나와지 가가 보셔서 어디 들고 근데 나와지 제는 가서 상호다나 나와를 빈 시시제 나와서 가서 상호다나 비지 용토야죠
무슨 나가서 되게
라
무슨 나가서 뭐지다
무직성 어디 남기 무직 탈타데서 본바도 부ven이라 무직이 있어야 돼. 무슨 타 농지 타디메가 샤고로. 똑바로 타 재미도 해난 거. 본배이나다 본바니 재미도 해난 거.
맞아. So Siddhartha Martins are contending that things do not exist the way they appear to our conceptual perceptions. Tokpa. Okay? There's a difference between conceptual perception and direct perception. Right? Direct is Ngunsum and conceptual is Tokpa in Tibetan. And the example Geshe has given is in the Buddhist literature, a moon is called by different names. Right? The moon itself we call Dawa. There's nothing, etymological explanation we can give about it, because whoever thought I will call it moon, that's all there is to it, right? So everybody started to call it a moon. But sometimes we call, of course it won't come eloquently in English, bear with me, but you get the meaning, sense here. That's what happens when you translate between different cultures. But the moon is also called Ribongchen, the one with the rabbit inside it, right? So it's sort of, the moon is also called Silselchen, the one that gives you the coolness, sense of thing. Okay? So when our conceptual minds look at the same object called moon, right? If you call it by moon, you have a different sort of sense. If you call it by like the one with the rabbit inside, right? It has a different thought and feeling to it. It appears to us, right? And then we call it, well, it is that refreshing, cooling light, this lunar disk over there. It gives you a different sense of it, But the moon does not exist the way it appears to those three conceptual perceptions, because one is one with a rabbit, one is with this cool, refreshing, light, and the one is whatever this other thing is. So that's why they said there is no such thing as external entityness in the moon. Otherwise, the moon could not be, appeared as those three things. And if it were to be considered as true, then there could not be one moon, because the one with a rabbit and one with, this cooling, all this thing, right? That's what the Chitta Martians are talking about. When we talk about how, for example, a vase or a pot with all its features, right? A pot's feature, a pot and its feature are of the same nature, right? They have the same nature. Now that is posited through the direct perception, isn't it? When we perceive a vase or a pot, we perceive the wholeness of the pot as well as all these features of the pot, right? They are of the same nature. Now that is asserted not from the conceptual experience point of view, perception, but it's from the direct, valid perception point of view. So in the Brahmana Vartika text of valid cognition treatises, so it is mentioned that way things might appear to our conceptual thought, processes of perception, maybe in these two ways. One is things might appear as being identical or of one nature, right? Or it might appear to be of different, different aspects, if you will. And the examples given is, when we mix water and milk together, what do we see? Just only one thing. Either it's a milk or it's a water, right? We're not going to see two things here, right? That's how our conceptual perception sees it, because the milk and the water got mixed together, now they become one thing, okay? That's what we see. But when we look at moon and the stars, they appear different, right? The stars don't appear as moon and the moon as the stars, because those appear to our perceptions as different objects, okay? So those are the two ways in which we conceptually experience, phenomena, if you will, from conceptual point of view. So that's why if we call moon by different names, right? That in English, I know, poetic expressions, right, name. But by using different expressions or labels to the moon, we might get different conceptual experience, sense of that. But then if we collapse them, you know what? The one with the rabbit inside and the regular moon that we talk about, actually it's the same thing, isn't it? It's just the moon. Okay. Now it is like mixing water and milk together. While we said, you know what? All these different names, doesn't matter, it's the moon. Okay. Right? So you see how this is, we process it, conceptually, experience this.
You couldn't cover the soak now, the penis you to number table, so she nango rata, number table, the one is that. That you number there, Maris. Carson, log part in Dogberg, down of the sheen, any court in Jordan, see you the Ajimazi, you couldn't did it number there, Maris. They not that this is what you've been gabba Pama some machine. And the day for the tire cell, Phuntsok that Phuntsok Munita could take Samuel or shot the Kansa could Yadu Ganga inside Chipashadu. That's so big. Pagja, no, you're so at the Shah, then she had the shirt on the mother of this. Little Pasha is word with the Depa Java is. Teacher that causes so the word of Minda de Jata, no, the Shagarawa. What they take it is. this is that.
Sati tome ishil.
Tome ishil.
Chitta Martins on the mindfulness school of thought, they propound their emptiness, because I have to say their emptiness, so we're talking about Chitta Martins here, from two different angles of the perspectives. One is they present emptiness from the conceptual, wisdom perspective. Okay, right? It's from conceptual kind of understanding or insight perspective that present emptiness, right? Which we just talked about, how things could appear differently to different conceptions, but they don't exist, in the way they appear to our perceptions. But they also present emptiness from the non-conceptual insight or wisdom perspective, okay, as well. Now, what does that mean? According to Chitta Martins, is there is no such thing as external objects. Okay, there's no such thing as external object, in Tibetan. Okay? And so what this really saying is, for us ordinary people, when we look at things, it is as if the things really exist from their side, isn't it? Everything just appears from there to here, right? Because everything is, looks like, well, that exists, you exist, everything, That's how it appears to us. But that said, but things don't exist in that manner, right? With that kind of entityness. What we see there is, as a matter of fact, the reflection of our own subjective perception. What is here is reflected there. That's what we're seeing. All the things seem to exist there, like, here I am, look at me, right? No, but it is what's inside us, right? That subjectivity is reflected over there. So therefore, there are no external, what we call object or externally existent objects. Now, the example Geshe has given is this. Three of us can look at the same person, and we might come out with three different conclusions and perceptions, right? One of us sees that person as a friend. Hey, there's a friend. One of us sees, well, that's the enemy, number one. Right, he didn't say number one. I just added the number one, right, to emphasize here. Right? Then one of these, I don't care, stranger. Right? Now, if something exists from the side of the person, then there must be three things, right? There's an enemy, there's a friend, and there's a stranger. Now, everybody got it right, let's say, right? I'm valid, and you are valid, and she is valid. Now, who is this, right? We got a problem here, isn't it? So what Chitta Martins is saying is, it just depends upon the predispositions in our mind. Maybe one of us has that predisposition that reflected in this person, like, my dear friend. Right? One of us got that latency in our mind, like, I hate you, my enemy, number one. Right? He didn't say hate, but I added that again. And one of us got this latency activities, stranger, 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 right? So this is what's happening. What is inside is reflected there, and that's what we are seeing. So therefore, the conclusion is there are no externally existent objects, period, right? So what I just talked about, though very briefly, is this, that from Chitta Martins' point of view, emptiness can be presented or asserted from two different angles or perspectives. One is from the conceptual insight, understanding, wisdom perspective. The other is from the non-conceptual, wisdom or insight perspective. Okay? And so Chitta Martins used this language, the jugul. When we label something, right, we label it onto something there. Right? There's something that we are labeling onto. So whatever that thing is, according to them, it does not exist by way of its own characteristics. Now, that is a very pervasive claim, right? That applies to every phenomenon, everything that exists. Whatever labels or the terms or the names we give to that thing or those things, right? The basis of our labeling, so to speak, the jugyul, right, the object there that we're engaging with, they don't exist by way of their own characteristics. Okay. Now, when we Chittamajans talk about there are no externally existent objects or external objects, now this refers only to what we call produced phenomena, not all phenomena, right? Products or the produced phenomena do not exist, externally, because they are the reflection of predispositions in your subjectivity, experience. Yeah, that's what the Chittamajans are talking about.
我记得他插起用带子，现在收着我这带着的，我不讲现在平时那几块都引进来的，现在以前现在带子没到，有的要带子要大概是那几块银是能留着的。
No, sir.
我的。
So just for the sake of sort of a little bit easier understanding, although we are not going into every detail, so if you go into every minutiae detail, there will be some things will pop up, we know that. But Geshe says when we use form or sound as examples, because they belong to the same category, right, products, okay? So we can say there are no externally existent form or externally existent sound, that seems to be fine. But we cannot use the same terminology, externally existent object, to refer to all phenomena, because non-products, as we say, that exist, we can talk about that. So therefore, the term we use is jugyu rangitsinyi manuba. Whatever that basis we are engaging with and we are labeling it, that basis of the object does not exist by way of its own characteristics. Now that applies to one and all existence.
但是所是为主体生活，主体的主体带是起来的，主体生活的。别些那些像主体带是哪个都生活的。我觉得他这个是开始呢，变成他的东西小的在那，他搞着入到水呢，所都搞着长毛的搞在那晓得吧？现在他可以这个的这个搞嘛的呢，因为个内陆头热头嘛是吧？现在他。 可是全世界这个去了通知吧，干那这个人去了干，这个呢这个干着过，干着过了吧？这嘛干那个东西他都这个嘛的，可是东西各家吃到么给差着过了吧？这个呢，觉得各家吃到么那东西他们这个嘛是吧？我觉得就是他的可以不给全世界这个干那应该各样几块的。
So Geshe is very precise in the use of which is in the Tibetan language over the centuries, so I don't think I can do justice here, where he's making a difference between the jugyul, which is literally translated as engaging object, right, the object that engaging with, but the jugshi is the engaging basis, whatever. So there's some kind of a difference in terms of the terminology, the use of it. So he said it's not the jugyul, engaging object, it's the engaging basis, if there's any making any sense in my translation here. Or at least, make a note somewhere. So any schools of thought, right, when they propound emptiness, right, the ultimate nature of things or the reality, they have to, really talk about, from their perspective, what is, that what called object of negation. What precisely is being refuted or negated, right? In presenting their reality emptiness. The subtlety of that object negation must be established. Otherwise, they cannot claim that once you understand that so-and-so does not exist in that mode, then you have realized the emptiness from our perspective. You just cannot say that, because there is an issue here. So it applies to all schools of thought. So that being said, it doesn't matter so much whatever the basis we use to engage in and try to realize the emptiness of that object. Once you precisely recognize, identify the object negation, you understand the emptiness of that object, then it's pretty much, shifting your focus to other phenomena and you will realize the emptiness of that other phenomenon, right? Otherwise, we might have to say that your understanding of this phenomenon's emptiness is somewhat deficient, is incomplete, So you have to rework, right? We have to go back to a starting point. Okay? So what's important in any schools of thought is, what precisely is the object of negation or gaksha? Okay? And that object of negation should be pervasive. It should be applied to every phenomenon, not like half here, half there, incomplete here, partial. No, it has to be right comprehensive, to the subtlest level, identification of the object of negation. And then once we realize the emptiness of that, negation, then it can be applied to any basis of the phenomenon.
어디 코인지다데 내로 좀 찍바리고 지나 다다 치료도도 집에 동화사야 되냐면 제르벌 먹고는 별 용자 다세도 치료도 동화사야 동이 시고서로 와. 단 주의랑생이 뭐라서야 돼 제르 무시 먹고는 별 비지 탄이에서 매다도 와. 요말 다 가지 다데 장애시네 사된 장애시다 니거데 사된은 수명원대로 하시다 제르벌 장애시대잖아. 근데 장애 사된은 다데 틱두다 두는 어디여서 뒤수 좋은 시다. 근데 뒤뒤시네 배 그래서 제르벌 비지 사도 탄이도 야 쇠로 채워도 그래. 그래서 기도를 들고 가서 내말에는 숭지제에 동안마도 제일 주기랑 생이 동안서야 돼. 탄이자 많은 거 요말서야 쓰는데. 어디 제가 제일 뭐지 다디 주기랑 생이 동안서야 돼. 제일 뭐지 송 가서 다 소용도 페이지 셰스나 다 리우지. 별 탄이도 녀면도 와.
하루 치료된 집에 동안서는 얘는 여러 번.
어제 수이 집에 동안이 당연 제일 뭐고 그 배바 개바도 해야 되고 와.
Emptiness of externally existent objects, right? That terminology already existed before Lama Tsongkhapa, behind me, appeared in Tibet, footnote 14th century, right? Before Lama Tsongkhapa came, into the scene of Buddhist world, that language, emptiness of externally existent object, it existed already. Okay? But I think it's only after Lama Tsongkhapa came that he started to elucidate this other terminology, which we called, emptiness of, emptiness of that engaging basis by way of its own characteristics, right? Something existing by way of its characteristic, lack of something existing by way of its own characteristics. That, language, I think, come after Lama Tsongkhapa's elucidation. And how he did do that is because Lama Tsongkhapa, when he started to look into the Sadenga, right, the what called what is this? So there is a text called Tekdu, which is the condensation of the vehicles, like literal translating, and the 5 levels, bodhisattva levels, Bhumi. So when Lama Tsongkhapa, based upon those works, started to elucidate the difference between that which is definitive and that which is interpretable, right? The big topic, right? That cracks our bones. That's a footnote, by the way. Chang'e, when he started to differentiate between that which is definitive and that which is interpretable based on those works, then Lama Tsongkhapa, right, started to clarify this other version of how nothing exists by way of its own characteristic, right? If we look at any engaging basis, it doesn't exist by way of its own characteristics.
제르부제 가르사디 틱두다 도와서 숨베네 주기랑 시르베 동안 때를 파마더나 수근지게 동안 지고 본 엔디 텔 가르사 디하모나 엔디 테서 심더벨로리아 엔디 동이 타르부 쳐토 말으시고다 거기 당기 시르도 도와디 주시면데 쳐본도 그래서 다 주기랑 시르 동안 세디 샴탑제 쳐거라 그래서 탑미시 송도 타시고 행 말으시고
So Lama Tsongkhapa has stated it clearly in his works that if you don't understand how, whatever that basis we're engaging with is, right, it does not exist by way of its own characteristics, then we are really not going to understand, emptiness of Chittamatra school of thought, mind-only school of thought. We may understand what is called the non-duality between subject and object, that much. But that alone is not a complete understanding of the emptiness of Chittamata's school of thought. In order to understand completely Chittamata's emptiness, we have to understand that basis, whatever we are engaging with, it does not exist by way of its own characteristics.
that don't you that saying some said that seems like saying something that I go to that so to so current him so you judge you see to Thomas and that she to Thomas and they don't need the share. That call ya tell ya Kunda that near that call Dodge with chat, don't check the Jurang see to us and Yomarwa. She called Juk with charging you there are run see to a minute because so he would judge you or Juk is a call. You say chat don't touch you the other. That you don't see to us in Karsay, so called news on Jugadil, you don't see to us do. But even Titon anything young to share. Or she that sure time jail, pitch that the machine Jardate, Karates, your machine, sure time to Jipot, that so called draw nation to the
So those three characteristics or three definitions or three classifications, Senyisum, that we mentioned earlier, other dependent phenomena, Shenwang, thoroughly established phenomena, Yongdruv, and imputed phenomena, Gunda. So they are applied to all existence and everything that exists. And so earlier I give this example of how looking at a form, we can talk about those three characteristics, right? The form itself is an other dependent phenomenon, okay? And the form, and its basis, whatever it is, it does not exist by way of its own characteristics. That is the thoroughly established phenomenon or the emptiness of the form, if you will. And the form that is, engaged conceptually, because when we engage conceptually with an object, right, it involves the sound or the name label, and it also, the conceptual image, right, of the object. There are two things here. It is something is called name. There's a sound image, and there is the object image, right? So therefore, that part of the form is called imputed phenomenon. Okay. Now, the same thing when we talk about what we call non-products or permanent phenomenon. I didn't hear the word used permanent, but let's say a non-produced phenomenon. The explanation has to be a little different, right? We have to be careful how it is. But these three definitions can be applied to non-products.
That could human don't see to say I did that, though they were cheap. You just you because you didn't go in city, go Gyeltsen that don't see to see or what. That you knew that Tony is another, you knew the material at the Cardiac, you knew that this or that go. Kunda see the Zumba of shit. You knew the thing Goji, Ray or what? Just the Gajata Goji in the chick, they chick me then, the magic do back over me. You got Zumba, you got them by the chick, Chikara, your level.
No, the young Justin again, you
do the material, you did that. No, you do the material and go Kunda see what the car be shot, you do see or what. She the Kunda see what the Koran see to Mena. Kunda see to a coca to my level. You got Zumba knows and Zumba Zubaka to my because the Gaza Medina cover the government the Gaza, the Nika Debo go minister, sends them a look there, go minister, which is the T-shirt and chick share. Charging the court in the Hyong, Nilk Tadu Yinza, T-shirt and go in the rang sing to yes. What is it?
Rang sing to some
Tubata. You do rang sing to what? You do the rang sing to be zero of the hill.
Alakunda and get singing Maduba.
Then the good thing Moto said, or rang sing matters and then she Jago, she doesn't Kundalian. You engage the Mingini or you get Namta Gunda, that things of Gunda say, do I? The Karia de Gaza, the things of Gunda, Gaza, the Kanye. Then again, this one's getting in this, commerce. Tanda can this one there. Gunda Rang singing Marubadi. Gunda singing Marubadi, Tony, say. Oh, did I see what to what the Gaza? Yundu Rang singing to Badi? Yundu couldn't sing you dog with Gizek Harrison. Ko Gaza the cow in the Kudarang What is one? Gaza made the cover with the Gaza, you got them go in the ladder. Sims of Lola. Alakundarang singing. Oh, that Zumba Zumba Kajiko, Kim is the go when you got Zuma Nanza. 지 가야 돼 못통 말수다 단다 아니
알아,
군다랑 시바 가운데 상다 군다랑 시바 파면서 용도 니 더 차고 와
알아.
대창도 더 예버서 차와
생이 머르버 나시요.
지지와
군다랑 그 생이 머르버디.
됐다.
윤도랑 그 생이 드버디.
저한테 가자 군다랑 시 모터 버스는다 주변 동안 쓰는다 용도
라로. I think I have to rethink this very carefully. This gets so complex here. Double check before I even tell you what it is. Again, the young George, say just some of the Kiserona, King and Koymer again. This is the Karsugore. Then the Siava, Kundela Soba, and a Karsur Shalandi, Dota by the Chibares.
Oh, did it? The Gyeltsen, the wrong thing to the motor in Sula.
Love Gyeltsen to race like what? That young see the Tindu picture over again. 다 군다 랑게 생이 두바디 각자들 와게 아니 군다 랑게 생이 두바 까바디 용주로 와게 다 용주디야
덴바데고
야 덴바두데서
덴바두데서 디고 코 덴바 모로도 군다랑 실바 까토 말시고 가자메데 까바디가 니가 데보 고민나라와 어디 소직들이 소직니 코 용주디 무분nel로 타두고 와 어디 차네 이 거랑시 좋으시고
Just like Southern takers, Chida Martin said that other dependent phenomena, which are basically the products, right, cause and effect relationship, these are other dependent phenomena, they are truly existent. The Tibetan word is tendu, right? We have to keep all those labels, properly, right? So other dependent phenomena are truly existent, tendu. Okay, we got one on the side, let's see. According to Chida Martins, the object of negation is, right, how should I say? Imputed phenomena existing by way of its own characteristics. That's the object of negation. Imputed phenomenon, kunda, right, existing by way of its own characteristics, that is the object of negation according to Chida Martins. Okay? When we negate that, right, what is established is the thoroughly established phenomena. Phenomena lacking characteristic existence, right, existing by way of their own characteristics, that is the emptiness. That's the ultimate reality, which is called thoroughly established phenomenon, according to Chida Martins. So that thoroughly established phenomenon is truly existent. Okay? Thoroughly established phenomenon. Now you see the complexity of that, right? Why I got stuck with it, earlier. Now you are getting stuck here. Let me repeat it carefully, right? Other dependent phenomena, which includes cause and effect relationships, are truly existent, okay? According to Chida Martin, just like Southern takers. Okay? According to the Chida Martins, what is being refuted, negated, that we should identify precisely is, imputed phenomena existing by way of their own characteristics, because that's not possible. Okay? Yeah. So when we refute that kind of characteristics of imputed phenomena, what we realize or understand, established, is the emptiness, according to Chida Martin, which is called thoroughly established phenomenon. And that emptiness, thoroughly established phenomenon, is truly existent. Okay? And so that's the important matter. They said, if the thoroughly established phenomena were not truly existent, were to be false, then that cannot be the ultimate reality, according to Chida Martin's school of thought.
어디 다 이제 semsamba 지다 리베제나다 롱고제나서 니여와 다다 이제 그 니가 늦지 찍바 투모가 되레스.
So Chida Martin's mind's only school of thought, we generally classify into two. Those who are the followers of reasoning or rationality, Rigpa, and those are the followers of spiritual authority or Lung. So what I have explained to you, is accepted by both types of Chida Martins.
다들 가서 롱고제나들 투모마이버 가서 되게 대세워다 남지 속도가래 꾸시다 뉴인이 잡는 남지 속이 소예 되거다. 남지 예.
알디 룽 전화 주고를 배.
롱고
리베 전화 그 두고
말이야.
말이야. So one of the major difference between the Chittamardans who follow reasoning and who follow spiritual authority is those who follow spiritual authority, Lung, they accept 6 consciousnesses, right? Usually we talk about, 8 consciousnesses. But we know the 6 consciousnesses, right? We have the 5 sensory consciousnesses plus mental consciousness. That, is generally accepted. In addition to those, now they have 2 more consciousnesses. One is called Gyeltsen, Alayana Vijnan, or the foundation consciousness, or the mind basis of all. Those is how we translate it, right? And then one is the Nyunyi. Nyunyi is the afflictive consciousness or deluded consciousness. So according to Chittamardans who follow spiritual authority, they said there are 8 consciousnesses. But the Chittamardans who follow reasoning, they don't accept, right? 8 consciousnesses.
我对他估计是看这是挺熟的，估计是的，俺开始我没这个么的，心中公众啊，看到上班点个，我在考虑人那个有看着我是别我的么就革命个，龙马点下个的，考虑人那估计是考虑那龙马点么给我的没个介绍么的，看到考虑是呢。game की फगजा था कहाँ तो ले साने थे चार तो ले का ना रिव्यू में थोड़ा और वाह सेता ता का दे ले तो कहाँ देख रहे थे ऐसे गार्डन का देख रहे थे और नहीं ता जो तो मुझे सही ना भी देख रहे थे हे और वाह तो सब तो बता लोग जैसे कुछ ही गाल दिया कुछ हो रहा और दी कुछ ही दिखा रहे थे लुंगमा देंगे आकर से ना उनको खाती है ना लुंगमा दे इन जुन्ची आचे को कौन दी जुजू खा मुझे जो मैं कब जो तार मैं वैसे ताया नंबर 7 योमर कोना बे सारे से रासे दे उसे ये पे ना भाषा जिया था दिने के सूक्ष्म मेंगे को दे दो
So if we ask Chittamardans Manchu school of thought, could you explain what is this Alayana Vijnan or foundation consciousness or mind basis of all, right? Why do you assert it, And so they said that, Alayana Vijnan or the Gyeltsen, mind basis of all, it is a consciousness that, exists all the time. It is a neutral state of consciousness. It's neither positive nor negative. So therefore, it's a neutral. Okay, so it, stays manifested. But at the same time, when we try to kind of think about what it is, try to figure out, it's kind of a little hazy, vague. It's sort of a vague consciousness. We don't know, it's this. There's a little bit haziness about this, consciousness. And why this is important for them is they said, it exists forever, right? It's never going to stop anywhere. And when you and I create positive and negative karmic actions, right? And these karmic actions deposit their latencies or imprints on this particular consciousness. So this mind basis of all, or foundation consciousness, is the storehouse of our karmic imprints. So it carries, right, into many lifetimes because it just exists. It's never going to stop existing. It just, and it's neither positive nor negative. And so that's their presentation. You know how in different Buddhist schools of thought, they assert that something must exist from one life to another life, right? That's all the Buddhists agree. Then we said, what is it? Tell me. And many of them say it's the mental consciousness, right? Not the sensory consciousness. It's a mental consciousness that goes from life to life. And some other philosophers are like, what is it exactly? There's something called mere I, merely labeled I, right? That's the person, the self. So it exists from one life to another life. So different schools of thought will come to explain what it is. And according to Chittamardans, it is the storehouse consciousness, it's the foundation consciousness, it's the mind basis of all consciousness, Gyeltsen.
미게 바자샤 강가 샤고로 어제 그 개와 있는 그걸 미게 바자샤도 미게 있는 게 바자샤도 버리스 그래서 디스고다 남에메도 세 디시모 요만로 제가 드서야 뗄다 두서 남에메도 지고도 버리스 지고거리스 다 걱정을 고박으로 가서 남에메도 지도 고고에서 말아 어디 고고 버리스 그 lumade 인글리지 되시와
According to Chitta Martins, why do they assert the storehouse consciousness or mind basis for all foundation consciousness as a neutral state of mind? It's because they say, you know what, it it stores both positive and negative karmic imprints. If they say if you would assert it to be a positive consciousness, then negative consciousness cannot deposit its imprint on it. Or if you say it's a negative consciousness, then the positive cannot exist there. So therefore, it has to be neutral, right? Neither positive nor negative. That's there. And then the example given is, I even don't know what that flower is called. How some flowers, their scent can be transferred to some other things, right? They can. But some things, the scent cannot be transferred to something else. So there's something to do with the flower itself, how you can, receive the scent of other things, or you do not receive it. For example, like a garlic, the garlic is not going to get the beautiful scent of beautiful flowers. Garlic is garlic, it smells garlic. So something like that the foundation consciousness is neutral, neither positive nor negative, so that it can receive the imprints of both positive and negative karmas.
Number you to the did and demo say at the Geshe today, Yomare. Number is Majiva. Kolkundunga Sumbanegi. Number is now the Namu leg, Namis grow leg choking you model. Kadu Yugi and until you hit the Kadu Yugi of Juaja Mare. Tiamargo. Call leg to joke the association.
Les the kana lende ki le de ko chave le.
O ta ko nyama lejo. Ngame legi. Ko jawa ka lenga ji lengra. O di shung de tamba lezi shung ji jaw mare. O di shung di call ba shung de.
And so this storehouse foundation consciousness is neither positive nor negative. It's a neutral state of mind or consciousness, and it is propelled by the force of the karmic actions. It's not like we can cultivate motivation and then we can direct our mind or consciousness to something. They said it doesn't work with this consciousness. It's only propelled by the karmic propensities from the past life, right? Whatever good and bad karmas you created is going to push that consciousness. There's no way we can manipulate and direct and redirect it into something else. It cannot be done.
고동으로 남기는 제기이기 내비서 거기 껴알래는 동에 남기 저거 말해. 섬노 되는단 거다. 그 구이세다 코로나 구이다 민놈도 못 shadan 가가래서. 근데 거기 현다 제기 남기셔야 되다. 여기 매지 간가 저거로 와. 근데 직바이다 껴알래게 남기들 구이세고. 그리고 그 껴알래도 코도고 와.
And so in many other Buddhist school of thought, they feel that there is a consciousness that connects different lifetimes, and so most of the schools accept there is such thing as mental consciousness or Tsinshi Yiki Namshe, right? And so now the Chitta Martins, they're kind of thinking about the same thing. They say, that different lives must be connected. There has to be continuity of consciousness from one life to another life. But what is it? So through their theorizing and philosophizing it, they said there is something called storehouse consciousness.
다 난지 러지보다 된다 구시면도 너다 세기는 있어야 돼 주바이기 될 차라 인시네 그래서 주바이기 처모질 셔워로 와 다들 샘담하게 들려 채무 것이 유기 쪽대 랑자 샤 꾸지거라 로스 케샤로 와 어두 셰야
In other schools, for example, Sevatantric Madhyamikins, you ask them what goes from one life to the next life, that's that mental consciousness. And then if you say, can you be a little bit more specific here? Then they say, well, there is a subtle aspect of mental consciousness that goes from here to there, right? And whereas the Chitta Martins doesn't seem to talk about subtlety here. So they said, apart from the 6 consciousnesses, there's another consciousness, on the side, so to speak. So that is storehouse consciousness, right?
어디 제가들 구시 루비야 제다는 다다 릭바 틱디를 먹었어요. 다 제르머 구시 간데는 릭바 예에서 뭐 다가지. 어때 다 껴알래야도 치포와도 두도데 다 릭바 예어 거기 문다지.
So in the Tegdu condensation of yanas or vehicles, there's there is a mention of 8 reasons to establish the existence of a storehouse consciousness or a foundation consciousness. Why it must exist, because there's such thing as a rebirth. So who's getting reborn now, right? There's a Alayana Vidyan, right? Then they will come up with different reasons for that.
Jugi said, "Go you do that, go you do the you may son go on your maris. That she do the you doing the bad Zorgo. Shut up, she not give us Simon Dungo to go. That Dugino, that we said, could do yes, what that. Jugi the to your land to Mars, go you to us, cut to you and you and Jumar, in your land to Mars. Oh, that copy the you do among yet a life, but Namule, Pang to Bridge, go you that begins to take a young.
So according to Richard Martins, the storehouse consciousness really does not engage in any particular objects, right? They said all those perceptions that engage in objects, they're kind of transient and temporary, When the objects are there, they arise and then they engage, right? When the objects are not there, then they kind of stay in a dormant form or they die out or something, They said Arayana vision is not like that. It does not depend on objects, You cannot manipulate it with your motivation power. It is propelled by your karmic propensity, and therefore, right, because it does not depend on objects, it doesn't matter, object exists or not. It just stays put. It just goes, from one life to another life.
Oh, that Karsa. Guji that Rigbas doesn't that Jeremy can Guji in the country, but yet the course, the Ren Kuya,
Take the number.
To do Ribat, Jeremy Guji Sawasi, Chick, didn't do a Guji Candice, and Dewa Guji Sandesido, with that Pesate Tigatawa, but the Ribat Ye. Nui Duji Ribat Tognazi or Dosharis. Jeremy or the Yetagina. Tigdu is a German that Jeremy song to the Tanaka. That was something. And that he happened to that cover of Shungshamota young Kuzu or
Can you saw some German?
Guizawachi, Joani, Koran Zawachik, some young Joachik,
Sawa de German.
Oh, Zawachik, German Zawate and German, Jawate, Gujikandis, German on sunshine.
So Lama Tsongkhapa has written some works, to explain storehouse consciousness or foundational consciousness. And so in his 2 works, now we don't know whether these are in English or not, and Geshe says there is the root text of Kunshi, right? Kunshi Tsawa means the fundamental text Lama Tsongkhapa wrote about the storehouse consciousness. And then he also wrote a commentary illustrating the difficult points about the Kunshi. It's called Ka-del, right? Ka means difficult, and Del means explain it. And so he explains the 8 reasons for storehouse consciousness and the 6 reasons for the afflictive consciousness or the nyunyi, deluded, right? So Geshe thought, if you are particularly interested in those things, you should consult those works and hope those are in English and some other languages. If not, maybe the Tegdu, condensation of the summary of the vehicles, or the condenser of the vehicle, Tegdu, maybe it is in English.
That you knew it, you got to in knowledge.
So I think looking at the clock, we better stop there, and we will talk about nyunyi, afflictive consciousness or deluded consciousness another time. So we welcome your questions and your observations.
You made an example of the moon that 3 different names. There's beliefs that say that the sun, we know it's a star, we know that it provides, growth, plants, etc. But there was a belief that it was also a god. Okay, and so our phenomena, or their phenomena, they trusted in the sun to give them things that were almost unexplainable, I guess. I don't know about that religion. But we know that through science that it, makes plants grow. So, like the milk and the water blending together.
Right.
Is there any sort of blending of the religious aspect of the sun and what we scientifically think of the sun?
Oh, okay.
You know, or would it be the emptiness of the how they both exist together, but one is, I guess, not real?
Okay, I got. I think I understood your question. Maybe I just want to be more careful. So when you think about the blending of what you call religious aspect and this whole scientific aspect, what are you really precisely thinking about? What is being mixed like in milk and water here?
They both exist. The sun exists, but one person thinks of the sun as being
God,
a God,
right?
and I think of it
It's just a solar disk, right? Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So.
Oh, is that blending of the?
Yeah. How is that? How is
Okay.
that?
Okay, sure. Okay, thank you. Quran kita kan dishe dide ta de ke dawala ya ani sise jenda de bon mangus labar wa ge ming dam de ta yin ka la to bal ko dam de sha yin go wa ge ine ya di sise jende dawa re something ka la ta chu do ma de man shi ko to ko cha go wa ge ta di da ko de war sta ge sar wa ge chen pena chi khar so ko re ta ngo ni ma yin re dawa yin re ta chi dan ka so yu ngo be ne jo ya ta chen de be de she ge ta jung go wa ge ko pi ge yo re chu ga du go re di ge en chele chen de wa za xin nak zai ki go ka za she ji go wa ya chu lu go ta ne she we na ya ni ma da dawa se ge de lai gi ro ba ge ta ru si go da ka chi ro ba ge len chi de ka li ya da ji chu lu gi ko wa de da ji dan ji den be dan da chen de la so ke she jo ba ge di ni da ko chu do ma de ba ro ba ge ni de gi da ji ne de ro ji de yuan na men na so ro ba ge 다 가족 tembar에서 이제 책임을 하게 와. 달하래 고야 니마래 와게. 다 대직 소매로.
예. 다 다다 권에서 되죠. 다다 가서 통야지 니마다 다와 강사래서 거라. 다 최니 해다서 와. 다 강사대 나로 대연서는 다 샤워라.
다다 낭배시고래 힌두시고.
낭배 페이지데 힌두다 낭배 페이지를 찍바서 사기. 찍바면.
만족 내지고.
어제지다 네 다르라 거라 그래서 도 힌두다 찍바래가 디고 해야래도. 셰다 이거 그런 니마서야 돼. 있다는 건데 디는 지용성에 상리어라. 사랑 되고 니마서야 돼.
알아 니마서를 하죠. 저 통화대 비기 니
나들이고 진짜 다른 것도 해야 돼. 근데는 다들 너무 쉬히 있라고 하다. 그래서 다들 세르비스는 꼭 돌아오래. 우분들라고 하다. 하고야. 이거도 너무 쉬히 뭐죠. 그래서
알아 누구 추세고요.
비지. 무슨 달 맥되는 다 맥 팽기라고 해. 팽이도 뭐 시고. 됐어. 어디래?
다 트위 템베 차이로 써야 돼 인지로 와게. 술 템바여 써야 돼. 와다 간저디 다 다와기 강상래 로와게 데텐 밀 핑게 디 템바데 다 다와디 지단기 고 주가르지래 로와게. 다 가리 가르다.
예, 다 저기 하세요. 다 까마도 하이 장대래. 래 하이 장대다. 진짜 하이는 니만 다와니다 이게 주가는 해वन 좀디. 다 조시기 니 샤고로. 어지다서는 다 하이 장대고. 그렇죠?
다이네 디게 똑바 담아니 샤고로 와게. 다디 다기 추도 오마 데버네 진짜 sometimes 연하면 세지 메로.
다디
다만에 디 템베 고보 담아니 땡고래 디 세시 나마 들어와게. 하래 섬는 거네 하래 다 다가서 하래 섬데래 로와게. 다 민문에 미고 주가지도 요다.
네. 다 문에서 먼저 통해야지 다 통보다 이게 그가 의욕적인지 가지 지나고 너고 의욕적인 통보로 무슨 나와서 들디 다 먼저 단다 베지 싫어 봐야 했나 지바 로지 지바를 두고 강상에서 거라 뭐지 이제 그런 능만 사이버 나와서야 돼 이야 레스 다 세르스는 나와 의미도 세고서 왜 잡을래 야 자고레스 그래서 거기까지다 그것도 가가라도 뭐 가지 다다 지금 아마 히두시는 다가라래. 하이 분다와스. 통야디 강상하시고. 내가 니마다 알아야 니마서야지. 통야디 니메 강상들지 노비미시 인시고라.
No. So based upon Geshe's explanation, I did not get a sense of either way of the way you're thinking, like a blending and hybriding and all that here, in a sense. But there is acknowledgement that from spiritual point of view, I think because I was double checking, is this a Hindu point of view or is it Buddhist or is it a common perspective, right? When we say sun and moon are some kind of divine, Geshe said, the one we see in the sky, at night that's the moon, during the day it's the sun, that is not considered as a divine being, right? That is considered as an environment of the divine being. There is somebody called, a divine being called sun by the name. and he or she lives in that, abode called sun. That's what we are seeing. What we see is the environment. That's not the divinity we are seeing it. The same thing with the moon. That lunar disk we see is the house of the god, right? Mentioned. It's not a real god there, right? But that's one explanation. Of course, from a scientific point of view, they talk about the solar system. So whether there's any kind of a blending of things, we really don't know. Okay. So, yes. Go ahead.
Quick questions about the storehouse.
Yes.
Storehouse
Yes. Yes.
it's neutral.
Yes.
Which means it's not virtuous, not
Right.
virtuous.
Yes.
Which means that there is no, it doesn't involve perception of pain or suffering.
Uh-huh.
And happiness,
Uh-huh.
or pain and pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that it doesn't it doesn't have feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes me think that feeling is not a karmic ripening, because all the karmic seeds are in storehouse consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and yet feeling is not involved in perception of.
Okay.
That means feeling is not a karmic ripening. But we've,
Mm-hmm.
you follow?
Mm-hmm.
But we've heard before that feelings are karmic ripenings. So does that mean that according to them, feeling is not a karmic ripening?
Okay.
And the other one is being consciousness. Consciousness always cognizes something. What does it cognize?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Right. Mm-hmm. Sure. Kurang shwe di ta dan kunshi di kwal shugo ro again. Kunshi di ta kek me ke kha me lungma den sre la ro again. Se de kan kunshi Kurang la ya tidu ro din de nya ke je yo ma ro ro again. Kunshi Kurang tidu nya se ro again yo ro be.
Didu
kunshi Kurang ta wa
soga parba ba didu nya me
me ro wa di ro wa. Se za ani Kurang gi di sig do ken tidu nya ge me ba ina ta nam jung an zo tidu ko sowa segen di ene lele chungres la ro again. Sidu kala ani tanda di gi da samsam du da chawa ne ro again. Ani tidu ki en sowa yongsa dil da kane yungor so ro again. Kunshi Kurang tidu nyenge yo ma ro again. Di khande stress ro again. Da na shin kunshi ko di ro again sheba ro wa. Sheba ina nam yu ri bas go ro again. Ko kar thong go ro sa da rik sidu kala ko ri ya ro chi ro again.
미방동 파자 솔메 남바르스 마저서 옹보다 박자다 들어와 이네 그 온동 옹부시 동응하러 속자 저러가 대한민국 유디 치료건도 통해 미국 통해 디레게서 말이 그런 다 농로 디레고 속다 또 그런 그게 땡데 보신 뇌터야 샤고여서 디레를 말도 지금 먼저 미국 속 통하는 이신 그 옹보다 또 유디 셴 디레 인사 말이 신의 거야 뇌터야 저데 옹볼 된 거로 박자 박자에서 레인도 좀 말해. 인 숙자도 수 유이도 숙자도 요로와. 딘데지 때는다. 그 딜베 때 내던 거 좀. 그런 네바도 가이 매버 좀.
그런 게 리뷰 말게.
그런 다 희망 있나고 다. 리 나나 망이 소리래. 다 나나 망이 소리. 나나 망이 있어. 다 나가 가시라. 예반 되면 데레세 나바레스 마저와 디시도 디레 요마레 그 디레 마레스 디레 요마레
알아 타이네 단다디 먼저 소와티도 생엔 디 군시간을 샤베 박자 상을
소와티 박자데 소와 누디세야 돼 박자가 갖고 이거 건수한테 박자 샤자 샤라와 셰스 레세 데도 가레는데 디 박자 디코로 그저 자시민 거라
알아 군시코랑 박자를 땐데요 그래서
그런 박자 샤자 박자 세워서 그 내가 보자선 내가 연구 등에 무게 봐서 등에 봐그러와 근데 박자 되고 단다 샤고야지 박자 샤자 샤라와
이나 군시코나 박자를 땐요 말에
그런 박자 땡 박자
알 박자 거기 샤서 그 온걸 땐데요 그래서 so storehouse consciousness or foundation of consciousness is neither positive nor negative and it receives imprints of both positive and negative karmas. That itself does not experience pain or pleasure, right? But how we experience pain and pleasures are when those karmic imprints on the storehouse consciousness are activated, then we experience pain and pleasure, according to them. But the storehouse consciousness itself does not, right, experience pain and pleasure. But it is dependent upon our for its existence. I think it's dependent upon what we call the faculty of our bodies, psychosomatic faculties. That it does not really depend so much on the external sensory objects that we engage in, but something associated with our mind, right? Because it's some kind of a form associated with, conjoined with consciousness, sound, something. So it's a little bit dependent on those, sensory objects. But it does not have a discriminative awareness. It does not say, I see this, I don't like this. It doesn't have that. Let me see. And it is kind of a consciousness or the perception that we defined as nangla mangeba. Something appears to it, but it does not get registered or perceived. Right? In the perceptions, we have one of the perceptions called nangla mangeba. Right? Nangla means something appears to you, but you don't register it. What is it? I don't know. Right? It's one of those. Right? Yeah.
So it's a non-ascertaining perception.
Non-ascertaining. Right? Non-ascertaining. Yeah. Yes.
So finally, again, is feeling? That means feeling is not a karmic ripening, right? According to them.
Feelings are not karmic ripening. You mean? Why would you say that?
Well, by his explanation, that's why.
No, what Geshe said is that the storehouse consciousness carries the imprints of good and bad karmas. These imprints can give rise to the feelings of pain and pleasure, but the storehouse consciousness itself does not experience pain or pleasure. So that's two separate things.
Right, but all the karmic seeds are in the storehouse consciousness.
Right.
And the feeling is not in the storehouse consciousness.
Oh,
It's separate. It's not a karmic ripening.
I see.
Is a karmic
So you mean in the storehouse
the pain is not a karmic.
So you mean like in the storehouse consciousness, the feelings are not there. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Ada kona discuss erwa. Tanda kanzo sowa tidu senga jerwa ke. Tanda bena di kunshi di kan ya kya wada mike bele bhaja da shege erwa ke. Ina kunshi di na ya ta khang pa da masun di na ya kanzo sowa tidu senga de mya bras ko na yo maru ke.
소화도 발마라 소화는 발마라
발마라.
기바 이치인데 소화 예배 차려와 소화다 따님이 비차려
Ale.
내도 그냥
Yeah. We cannot say that it doesn't have any feelings, but usually it's called a neutral feeling, neither pain nor what's the other one? Pleasure. We talk about three types of feeling. Every because every consciousness.
소화 예배 차 다시 소화만 예배 희발했다 같이 희발 소수이나 같이 코점도 소화를 예배 차려
Right, because we usually, that every primary consciousness is accompanied by feelings, but not necessarily pain or pleasure, but but one of the three feelings has to be there. So that it is, as a matter of fact, there is what we call neutral feeling. That's neither positive nor negative. Neither pleasurable nor unpleasurable feeling. Yeah.
But there are other schools which say that feeling, whether neutral, pleasurable, or not pleasurable,
Right.
is all karmic ripening.
Uh-huh.
What they're saying, that's my understanding, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. What they're saying is that only neutral feelings are karmic ripenings.
Ale. Kurang this or dubla khashegi ke kasoda. And so what to do down you say wage. The legi ane ta so let me balden chungur say wa. Ta danda dele ya simsam be tule ya. Ke si let me be ki so chuna so tang nyum de ma do wa. Kaso tawa ta tunge ki kaso da. So what the let me balden chungur lai de yom so.
데레 데도 이인데 그래서 레 게디 인 리부신다 남이 소리고로 다 파르마데 따님세야디 데데게 남이 가인 거예요 말아 뭐 꾸지 거라데 남이 쓰고 레데 쓰고 되잖아 소아디 남이 쓰고 나면다 지다 남이 그대로와 가서 데스 가서 데도니 가로네 페이지 데 켜고 당어도 맞지 하시나 아니 ल्यामने गेवे नमे यामने मिगे नमी गोरवा ता छोआ तन्युसेया दे को नमी गे येरे माई खे या नजो जोरवा रोगा नजो पेदा दे on시 냠도 스피게 छोआ योरवा छोआ तन्यु योशो ओरिए 어두서 이나 가에 디 게무고 가래 드리 방야 가이 말와
단단 게 디선서 말 로리야 아니 소와 티도 되게 디 레기 나밍이 가서 중벌 스케일링으로 요.
딜링이죠. 레기 나미네 지금.
그래서 이나 단다디 군시 디게 나려야 소와 티도 되게
수도. 어다 그런 게 소와 가르는 거서 소와 대두자 용 말스 발마코는 용 거래서.
Because I was checking with Geshe, according to Cheta Martins, do they accept that pain and pleasures as feelings, these are the results of the ripening karmic effects, right? And he said, yes, according to them. But what we are differentiating here is that the storehouse consciousness itself, right, does not experience pain or pleasure. But there is this feeling that accompanies it, which we call is a neutral feeling, because pain and pleasures must come from either positive and negative, right? Karmic imprints. The neutral feelings sometimes come from certain karma, but sometimes neutral karmas do not depend upon karma. And so that kind of neutral feeling, he thinks it accompanies the storehouse consciousness. So I don't know whether that clarified yours or not, but
Not entirely, because clearly the feelings are a result of what happens in the soul. There's no question about that.
Okay.
To give an example, being hit by a truck.
Yes.
This is a karmic ripening of karmic.
Yes.
According in a storehouse consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
But feeling the pain is something entirely different, presumably not carried by the storehouse consciousness. Of course, it will be a result eventually if I'm to feel pain.
Oh.
But it's not a karmic ripening. That's my
Oh, that pain of the accident, right? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, now that example helps to, yeah.
The teaching of karma, it clearly says
Okay.
that the amount of pain you inflict on a being will actually be experienced by you in subsequent existence. It makes a difference.
Right. Hala Quran di samlatan de dwa game. Tapena motor stabjun che binar wa game. Motor tabjun che go de ko le chi gi debu min motor tab injir wa so. Motor tab ge chen chen nazastan gir wa game. Nazata ma de le min bi ki nami ka so ta chek mar wa so konjo ke che binar wa game. Motor tab di ko le kal min bi ki phagja mi di nami se. En motor tab ko nazastan gir wa game. Nazata ma de inji min ji le chi gi ta kar so ko re nami gi debu rest se wa. 다 슈올라다 걸 대부 메진 나자된데 영적으로 와게 얘는 뒷갑기 나자디 레게 남이
레다 데르 모타 다버디다 책 젠세야 저거와
노서
저
말로
다 모타 다버디 소소 둥에도 모타 다버디 둥에 못 와 봐라
라레
다디 피제 에 너무 레 남이 더지 인세우시고
노서
저 다버지 오게 거 나자도 맹여와 요 말아 그냥 레면은요 가시에 근데 모타 통소 망볼 사니 단데 분디랑이 와디레 메 페지 이기스다라 비데 메숨 이지야 야타 타도가
노서
这太好了，那个容碰见了，去清波去碰见些，我那他俩都没要嘛的，人家通过你媳妇要的，没送的他下个去，把这个没把兄弟的是吧？的没送他的，我听他说的，他说是这个两个，他跟着他的个长短长领导做老友的，现在蒙古通过的，他就来突。ini nyam tu ndede na ini be le tu no pe me do ndo phena me ta ban do o de lu ji mo do an ka ji yang jian shung na ko ne ma do xie yang ta zhe ji yo ro o tu gan ge da mo tu xie da le du go ro ta mo da da de kan du ka shung ya de ke jian sha ro
ene mo ta ba de yang ke le gi chen mo ta ba
so le ge ba je gi ta dang de do ji li ji da na mi de xiao ma de ba ji da dang de do ji xia zhou de xia zhou
Geshe thinks that in the case of that example, where somebody has an accident, right, where you said that could be affect the ripening karma, and then the pain that you experience may not necessarily be, right, ripening. And what he's saying is that it's a little kind of complex when it comes to the subtlety of a karma. In one sense, we can say that maybe that accident itself is an outcome of what we call, maybe part of environmental, right? Could be the environment result of a karma. But in another sense, the accident is just a condition. It happened, and which activated your karma to experience that and to feel the pain. Sometimes. So when we talk about like a suffering and pain, that is usually associated with your karma. That karma can be activated by some other conditions. So accident could just be is a condition. It's not
specifically about the Chitamatian position.
Yeah, that's right. So that's not this word again. Korangi.
It's a ripening of karmic seed. It's not the environmental conditions.
Right. Right. Korangi said that sometimes we when the Tana so Koran sometimes we can issue so Chidam member charo ke leg day marsa jo marwa sometimes Koran when the be na tanda di netan di chagi marwe so pena di morata badi leg na mi che Mora tamne nasa tamadi injimiji leg nami mai biche ro again.
mà thế thì chỉ có rồi bây giờ mỗi đợt tao xin là bây giờ ta chơi cái chuyện đó ngồi lấy những cái lên rồi
No so.
mỗi đợt tao thì người ta chơi chuyện rồi rồi còn nó rất là còn ngắm một thì đấy cái mà có thể chơi chỉ thôi nhé thế nên số ngắm lấy thì ta đi thì cái đó mình là sao rồi thế là chơi cái chuyện
No so.
ra
No so.
ta thì ngắm một số lấy nghe mà sao vậy chứ
No so.
ta lấy nghe mà thì chuyện thì mỗi đợt sự tu ya thì ta 저 체계에 대해서로 저 때는 따고 유전소라고 뭐무슨 랭에 벌써 근데 그 민요하게 gen지 토로 제가 리부토로
I think maybe we both will continue and I'll try to understand because Geshe is still going around here. So I don't think we are getting through this. Because Geshe feels still from the modern point of view, we might say, that accident is a conditioning factor because for certain karma to ripen have a pain, it must have that, right? So I think we are still caught in the loop. So we'll continue our conversation. Then the next round, we will ask it again. Okay, any other thoughts? Oh, okay, not okay. Geshe is pointing to me something. So before we do the dedication, let me make some announcements. This Friday, December 23rd, is Lama Tsongkhapa Day, anniversary of Lama Tsongkhapa, sitting behind me. And we have a Tsok offering, Gana Chakra, or simply called feast offering, where you bring fruits and things to bless and share. And so you're welcome to this Tsok offering at 7:30 Friday. And then we also announced that the next 2 Sundays we don't have teaching because one is Christmas and the other one is your translator is out of town again. So therefore, no teaching for the next 2 Sundays. Kange lode dimnye dinda nyenda namda raseve jinye doge jishe seje nyeye toga lebamze kanda sebe zara mare mendon donge jese rozo gwela boje taze yala tuje yangden so roda chero nyemo leje chado cheze che mare meze donge nyogo jinye cheze radena dene daje saju Yendel Lunzo Gyeltsen Tuyo Gu Chura Churda Chunyi Talu Munze Yang La Du Omara Bazan Nandi Omara Bazan Nandi Sende Chöye Kera Vöze Ye Talu Temo Mumba Rapsene Kada Tenju Shulu Lode Bove Nawan So, Lord Gyeltsen, Udon Pega de Gyeltsen Pove, Chudon, Memba Sin, Tenba Zinla, Wando Yishu, Tanyen Chogun Chala, Sowa, page 21. Obeisance to my Guru and Protector Manjushri, who holds at his heart a scriptural text, symbolic of his seeing all things as they are, whose intelligence shines forth as the sun, unclouded by delusions or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the loving compassion of Father for his only Son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose dragon thunder-like proclamation of Dharma arouses us from the stupor of our delusions and free us from the iron chains of our karma, who wields this sword of wisdom, hewing down suffering wherever sprouts appear, clearing away the darkness of ignorance. You who have been pure from the beginning, who have completed the stages achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva, whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha, I bow down to you, Manjushri, Om Arabhazanadi. O compassionate one, with the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom, so that I may gain insight into Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. Page 31. Like the sweet perfume of white lotus, born in the ocean of knowledge, nourishing honeybees, the fortunate being, your fame pervades all directions. You are proficient and powerful in upholding the precious doctrine. To you, O Lobsang Tenzin Wangda, respectfully I pray.
Chanjo senjo rinpo je ma ye ba na ye yo je ye ba nyam ba me ba yang ko ne pe wa yo to ni da wa rinpo je ma ye ba na ye yo je ye ba nyam ba me ba yang ko ne ko ai yo sa je be je jo je me do da re ra le je nin de yen ba de san je yin do me de we wa ye ro we na da yin che ba yo kan re ra we ko we xin gan de ben dan de wa ma le jong we ne 见了是王定心要作业，下边西天八度，天有人节，也当古如热那曼德拉，尼安达呀。